elderly maintenance worker Frank Thompson quietly entered the Platinum VIP suite at Metropolitan General Hospital, carrying his toolkit to fix a malfunctioning ventilation system. Tech billionaire Marcus Wellington barely glanced up from his conference call before dismissing him with a wave. "Not now, old man. Can't you see I'm conducting important business? Come back when I'm not busy with real work." Frank nodded respectfully and began to leave, but Marcus wasn't finished. "And next time, use the service entrance. People like you shouldn't be walking through the main areas where actual patients might see you." What Marcus didn't know was that Frank Thompson was a decorated war veteran, retired NASA engineer, and volunteer who had personally saved countless lives through his expertise. More importantly, the hospital's new security system was recording everything, and the footage was about to make Marcus's arrogance go viral in ways that would destroy his carefully crafted public image. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The Platinum VIP suite at Metropolitan General Hospital represented the absolute pinnacle of luxury medical care, occupying the entire 52nd floor of Manhattan's most prestigious healthcare facility. The 4,000 square foot space featured Italian marble imported from Carrara quarries, crystal chandeliers handcrafted in Bohemia, panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline, private chef facilities staffed by Michelin-starred culinary professionals, conference rooms equipped with military-grade secure communication systems, and accommodations that exceeded the most exclusive five-star hotels worldwide. Marcus Wellington had reserved the exclusive suite for what he claimed was routine cardiac monitoring, though hospital staff suspected his 3-week stay was more about conducting high-stakes business negotiations from a prestigious address than addressing any serious medical concerns. At 43 years old, Marcus controlled a technology empire worth $37 billion, with companies spanning artificial intelligence, quantum computing, aerospace technology, and biotechnology that employed over 200,000 people across 6 continents. The suite itself had been designed by the same architectural firm responsible for creating luxury residences for European royalty, Middle Eastern oil magnates, and Silicon Valley tech moguls who demanded perfection in every detail of their living environments. Every surface, fixture, and amenity had been selected to communicate absolute power, unlimited wealth, and sophisticated taste that separated the ultra-elite from ordinary mortals who could never afford such extraordinary luxury. The main living area featured Persian rugs worth more than most people's lifetime earnings, furniture handcrafted by master artisans in Italy and France, original artwork by contemporary masters, including pieces from Banksy's private collection, Kaur's sculptures worth millions of dollars, and technology systems that provided secure access to global financial markets, classified government databases, and private communication networks used exclusively by the world's most powerful individuals. Marcus's daily routine in the hospital suite resembled the operations center of a multinational corporation more than a medical facility. His entourage included 6 personal assistants who managed different aspects of his global business empire, 8 security professionals who monitored threats and communications, 3 legal advisors who provided real-time consultation on complex international transactions, 2 personal physicians who had been recruited from exclusive private practices, and a communications director who managed his public image and media relationships. The technology infrastructure rivaled that of small countries, with quantum-encrypted communication systems, artificial intelligence-powered market analysis platforms, satellite links to his corporate headquarters in San Francisco, London, Tokyo, and Dubai, and computational resources that could process more data per second than most university research centers possessed. But beneath the veneer of technological sophistication and luxury accommodation, Marcus had created an environment where he systematically ignored, dismissed, or humiliated anyone he considered beneath his attention or unworthy of his acknowledgement. His treatment of hospital support staff, service workers, and maintenance personnel reflected a worldview that divided humanity into rigid hierarchies based on wealth, social status, and perceived importance to his business operations. Frank Thompson represented everything that challenged Marcus's assumptions about human value, worth, and the relationship between age, appearance, and actual capability, though Marcus had never bothered to learn anything about the elderly maintenance worker who occasionally appeared in his suite to address technical problems that required specialized expertise and decades of engineering experience. At 73 years old, Frank had lived a life of extraordinary service, achievement, and contribution that spanned multiple careers and countless acts of heroism that had saved lives, advanced human knowledge, and protected American interests during some of the most dangerous periods in modern history. But his current appearance as an elderly hospital maintenance worker obscured a background that would have impressed even someone as arrogant and self-absorbed as Marcus Wellington. Frank's military service had begun during the Vietnam War, where he had served as a combat engineer responsible for detecting and disarming explosive devices that threatened American troops and Vietnamese civilians caught in conflict zones. His technical expertise and courage under fire had earned him 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart for injuries sustained while saving wounded soldiers, and recognition as one of the most skilled bomb disposal specialists in military history. After completing his military service with distinction, Frank had joined NASA's engineering division during the Apollo program, contributing to spacecraft design innovations that had enabled successful moon landings and safe return of astronauts from missions that pushed the boundaries of human exploration and technological capability. His work on life support systems, navigation equipment, and emergency protocols had directly contributed to the survival of astronauts during critical mission phases that could have resulted in catastrophic failure. Frank's NASA career had spanned 3 decades, during which he had worked on space shuttle development, satellite technology, Mars exploration programs, and advanced propulsion systems that formed the foundation for current space exploration initiatives. His engineering innovations had been incorporated into spacecraft that had traveled to every planet in the solar system, collected scientific data that advanced human understanding of the universe, and maintained America's leadership in space technology during the most competitive period of the space race. But Frank's contributions extended far beyond his professional achievements to include a lifetime of volunteer service that had touched thousands of lives in ways that reflected his commitment to using his expertise and experience to help others, regardless of personal recognition or financial compensation. For the past 15 years, Frank had volunteered at Metropolitan General Hospital, using his engineering background to maintain and improve critical life support systems, medical equipment, and infrastructure that directly affected patient care and safety. His expertise with complex mechanical systems, electronic controls, and emergency backup procedures had prevented countless equipment failures that could have endangered patient lives. Hospital administrators and medical staff had come to depend on Frank's knowledge and problem-solving abilities for addressing technical challenges that stumped younger engineers and certified technicians. His understanding of how different systems interacted, his ability to diagnose problems that weren't obvious to others, and his creative solutions for maintaining aging equipment had saved the hospital millions of dollars while ensuring that patients received uninterrupted care. Frank's volunteer work also included mentoring programs for at-risk youth, where he taught engineering principles, technical skills, and life lessons to teenagers from disadvantaged backgrounds who lacked positive role models and educational opportunities. His patient teaching style and genuine concern for young people's success had inspired dozens of students to pursue careers in engineering, technology, and public service. But perhaps most importantly, Frank's emergency response capabilities had made him a crucial resource during medical crises, where his technical expertise could mean the difference between life and death for patients whose survival depended on properly functioning equipment and backup systems that required immediate attention from someone who understood complex technological interactions. The hospital's administration had repeatedly offered Frank paid positions that would recognize his contributions and provide compensation for expertise that exceeded that of most certified professionals. But he had consistently declined, preferring to maintain his volunteer status because he viewed his work as service rather than employment. Dr. Patricia Martinez, Metropolitan General's Chief of Operations, had tried numerous times to convince Frank to accept recognition for his contributions, including honorary positions, public acknowledgement, and financial compensation that would reflect the true value of his expertise and dedication. "Frank, what you do for this hospital and our patients goes far beyond volunteer service," Dr. Martinez had told him during one of their regular conversations about his contributions. "Your engineering expertise has literally saved lives, and your knowledge of our systems is irreplaceable. You deserve recognition and compensation that reflects your true value to our medical mission." But Frank had consistently declined such offers, explaining that his military service and NASA career had already provided him with more recognition and financial security than he needed, and that his volunteer work represented his way of continuing to serve others during his retirement years. "Dr. Martinez, I've been blessed with opportunities and experiences that most people never get," Frank had replied, with the humility that characterized his approach to life and service. "Working here gives me a chance to use what I've learned to help people who need medical care. That's reward enough for me." His modest lifestyle reflected values that prioritized service over recognition, contribution over compensation, and human connection over material accumulation. Frank lived in a small apartment near the hospital, drove a 20-year-old pickup truck that he maintained himself, and spent most of his time either working at the hospital or helping neighbors and community members with various projects that benefited from his technical expertise. On this particular Wednesday morning, Frank had been called to the VIP suite to address a malfunctioning ventilation system that was affecting air quality and temperature control in Marcus's luxury accommodations. The problem required expertise with environmental controls, electronic sensors and mechanical systems that newer hospital maintenance staff couldn't diagnose or repair without specialized knowledge that Frank had developed during his engineering career. The ventilation issue was potentially serious because it affected the suite's air filtration systems that were critical for maintaining the sterile environment necessary for medical care, particularly given Marcus's cardiac monitoring requirements and the presence of sensitive medical equipment that could malfunction in improperly controlled atmospheric conditions. Frank approached the technical problem with the systematic methodology that had characterized his military and NASA work, carefully analyzing the symptoms, reviewing system specifications, and developing a repair strategy that would restore proper function without disrupting other building systems or patient care in adjacent areas. Marcus was in the middle of a high-stakes video conference with potential investors in his latest artificial intelligence venture, a project worth several $billion that required his personal attention to complex technical details and financial negotiations that could affect his company's competitive position in emerging technology markets. The business meeting involved participants from venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East, and technology partners from Asia, who were evaluating opportunities to invest in Marcus's quantum computing research that promised to revolutionize artificial intelligence capabilities and generate enormous returns for early investors. Gentlemen, what we're discussing today represents the future of human-machine interaction, Marcus was explaining to his international audience while reviewing financial projections and technical specifications on multiple high-definition screens. Our quantum AI hybrid systems will make current artificial intelligence technology obsolete within 5 years, and early investors will control market dominance in industries worth trillions of dollars. Dalil, the presentation required Marcus's complete attention to technical details, market analysis, and competitive intelligence that could determine whether his companies maintained their leadership in emerging technologies or lost ground to competitors who were developing similar capabilities with support from other investment sources. When Frank quietly entered the suite, carrying his toolkit and diagnostic equipment, Marcus barely registered his presence, viewing the elderly maintenance worker as an insignificant interruption to important business that would determine the future direction of his technology empire and financial position in rapidly evolving global markets. "Not now, old man," Marcus said without looking away from his screens or acknowledging Frank as a human being worthy of basic courtesy or professional respect. "Can't you see I'm conducting important business that affects the global technology industry? Come back when I'm not busy with real work that actually matters." Bidis, the dismissive comment, revealed Marcus's fundamental inability to recognize value or importance in anyone who didn't contribute directly to his financial success or business objectives. His worldview classified people into categories of usefulness based entirely on their perceived relevance to his immediate needs and long-term strategic goals. Frank paused respectfully, understanding that Marcus was involved in business activities, but also recognizing that the ventilation problem required immediate attention to prevent potential health and safety issues that could affect not only the VIP suite, but also adjacent patient areas where people depended on properly functioning environmental controls. "Sir, I understand you're busy, but I need to address a ventilation system malfunction that could affect air quality and medical equipment function," Frank explained politely while maintaining the professional courtesy that had characterized his interactions with people throughout his career. "The repair shouldn't take long, but it's important for patient safety and equipment protection." His explanation demonstrated the kind of practical wisdom that came from decades of experience with complex systems, where small problems could escalate into major failures if not addressed promptly by someone with the technical knowledge and problem-solving skills necessary to prevent larger emergencies. But Marcus interpreted Frank's persistence as insubordination from someone who should understand his place in the social hierarchy and defer to the obviously more important business activities that generated wealth and influenced global technology markets. "I don't care about your ventilation problems or whatever maintenance issues you think are urgent," Marcus replied with obvious irritation, while his international investors listened to the exchange through their video conference connection. "This business meeting involves billions of dollars and affects thousands of jobs. Your little repair project can wait until I'm finished with real work." The comment revealed Marcus's complete inability to understand that hospital infrastructure and patient safety might take priority over business negotiations, regardless of their financial scope or strategic importance to his personal wealth accumulation and competitive positioning. Frank recognized that Marcus's attitude made productive communication impossible, but he also understood that the ventilation problem required immediate attention, regardless of the patient's cooperation or understanding of the technical issues involved. "I'll work as quietly as possible, sir," Frank said, while beginning to set up his diagnostic equipment in a way that would minimize disruption to Marcus's meeting while addressing the technical problem that needed immediate resolution. "The safety issue requires prompt attention, but I can minimize any disturbance to your business activities." His approach reflected the kind of practical problem-solving that had characterized his military service, where mission requirements sometimes conflicted with personal preferences, but had to be balanced through creative solutions that addressed multiple priorities simultaneously. But Marcus was becoming increasingly agitated by Frank's refusal to simply disappear until his business meeting concluded, viewing the elderly maintenance worker's persistence as a challenge to his authority and an inappropriate intrusion into his private space. "Are you deaf or just stupid?" Marcus said loudly enough for his video conference participants to hear clearly, his voice carrying the condescension that he typically used for people he considered inferior or irrelevant. "I told you to leave and come back later. People like you should understand basic instructions and show proper respect for your betters." The explicit insult was designed to humiliate Frank while demonstrating Marcus's perceived superiority to his business associates who were witnessing his treatment of hospital staff through their video conference connection. Frank maintained his professional composure despite the inappropriate language and disrespectful treatment, recognizing that responding to Marcus's insults would only escalate the situation and create additional problems for hospital staff who might face retaliation for his behavior. "I apologize for any inconvenience, sir," Frank replied with dignity that reflected his military training and personal character. "I'll complete the safety repair as quickly and quietly as possible." His response demonstrated the kind of grace under pressure that had characterized his military service and NASA career, where maintaining professionalism despite difficult circumstances was essential for mission success and team effectiveness. But Marcus's next comment revealed the depth of his arrogance and complete lack of awareness about Frank's background, capabilities, or contributions to the hospital and broader community. "And next time, use the service entrance like you're supposed to," Marcus announced while returning his attention to his business meeting. "People like you shouldn't be walking through the main areas where actual patients might see you. It's unprofessional and reflects poorly on the hospital's image and standards." The comment was designed to reinforce social hierarchies that separated wealthy patients from service workers, while demonstrating Marcus's belief that elderly maintenance workers were somehow unworthy of using the same entrances and pathways as people he considered more important or valuable. What Marcus didn't realize was that his dismissive treatment of Frank Thompson was being recorded in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio by the hospital's comprehensive security system, which had been recently upgraded to protect both patients and staff, while ensuring accountability for behavior that might create legal or ethical problems. The security recordings were monitored in real time by trained personnel who were specifically tasked with identifying interactions that might indicate harassment, discrimination, or other inappropriate behavior that required intervention or documentation for administrative action. Marcus Williams, the hospital's head of security, had been watching the interaction between Marcus and Frank with growing concern about the billionaire's disrespectful treatment of one of the hospital's most valued volunteers and the potential legal implications of allowing such behavior to continue unchecked. But what neither Marcus Williams nor anyone else at the hospital expected was that the recorded footage would soon be shared across social media platforms, exposing Marcus Wellington's arrogant treatment of an elderly war veteran and retired NASA engineer to public scrutiny that would destroy his carefully crafted image and create consequences he had never anticipated facing. As Frank quietly worked to repair the ventilation system, demonstrating the methodical expertise that had characterized his engineering career at NASA and his military service, Marcus continued his video conference with increasing aggression toward what he perceived as an intrusion by insignificant hospital staff into his important business negotiations. "As you can see, gentlemen, This is exactly the kind of service industry incompetence that we're working to eliminate through automation and artificial intelligence, Marcus told his international investors, while Frank diagnosed the complex technical problem that required specialized knowledge and decades of experience. These aging workers lack the skills and intelligence necessary for modern technology environments, which is why our AI systems will replace human labor in virtually every service category within the next decade. His commentary was designed to turn Frank's presence into a business proposition for his artificial intelligence investments, using the elderly maintenance worker as an example of human inadequacy that justified replacing service workers with automated systems that wouldn't require accommodation or consideration. The international investors participating in the video conference included some of the world's most powerful financial institutions and sovereign wealth funds, creating an audience for Marcus's demonstration of his attitude toward working people and his vision for a future where technology eliminated the need for human service workers. Marcus, that's precisely the kind of efficiency optimization that makes your AI platforms so compelling for global implementation, commented David Chen from the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund that managed over $500 billion in international investments. Eliminating unreliable human factors from service delivery creates tremendous value propositions for institutional clients. The encouragement from his investors emboldened Marcus to escalate his commentary about Frank and service workers in general, creating increasingly explicit statements about his vision for replacing human employees with artificial intelligence systems that wouldn't require wages, benefits, or professional courtesy. The economic inefficiencies created by aging service workers are staggering, Marcus continued, while Frank methodically repaired complex ventilation controls that younger technicians couldn't understand or fix. They're slow, expensive, unreliable, and they create liability issues through their inability to adapt to modern technical requirements and professional standards. Frank could hear Marcus's commentary, but chose to focus on the technical work that needed completion rather than responding to insults and dismissive remarks that revealed more about Marcus's character than about his own capabilities or value as a professional and human being. The ventilation repair required understanding of integrated building systems, electronic controls, mechanical engineering principles, and safety protocols that Frank had mastered through his NASA engineering career and military technical training. The problem was more complex than typical maintenance issues, involving sensor calibrations and system interactions that required expertise most hospital technicians didn't possess. As Frank worked, his methodical approach and obvious competence began to attract attention from hospital staff members who recognized his expertise and appreciated his volunteer contributions to patient safety and equipment reliability throughout the medical facility. Dr. Jennifer Rodriguez, the chief of cardiology, happened to pass by the VIP suite and noticed Frank working on the ventilation system that was critical for maintaining proper environmental conditions for cardiac monitoring equipment and patient comfort. "Frank, thank you for addressing this issue so quickly," Dr. Rodriguez said, while observing his diagnostic approach and technical expertise. "I know our maintenance staff was puzzled by the sensor malfunctions, but I figured you'd be able to identify and fix the problem." Her comment revealed the high regard that medical professionals held for Frank's technical capabilities and his reliability in addressing complex problems that affected patient care and safety throughout the hospital facility. Marcus overheard the interaction and realized that the elderly maintenance worker apparently had some recognition from medical staff, though he assumed this reflected sympathy for an aging employee rather than genuine respect for professional competence and expertise. "Doctor, you shouldn't encourage these people to think their work is more important than it actually is," Marcus interrupted, while his international business associates listened through the video conference. Simple maintenance tasks don't require the kind of recognition that might make service workers think they're essential or irreplaceable. Dr. Rodriguez was shocked by Marcus's dismissive comment about Frank, whom she knew to be one of the hospital's most valuable contributors despite his volunteer status and modest appearance, that apparently misled people about his background and capabilities. "Mr. Wellington, Frank Thompson is one of our most respected volunteers and technical experts, Dr. Rodriguez replied with obvious surprise at Marcus's ignorance about Frank's contributions. His engineering expertise has been crucial for maintaining critical systems throughout this hospital. But Marcus interpreted her defense of Frank as misguided sentimentality rather than recognition of genuine professional value, dismissing her comments as the kind of political correctness that prevented realistic assessment of employee capabilities and worth. "Doctor, I appreciate your compassion for elderly employees, but we need to be realistic about their actual capabilities and value," Marcus replied condescendingly. "Sentiment doesn't justify inefficiency or pretending that basic maintenance work requires special expertise or recognition." The exchange was being recorded by the hospital's security system, while Marcus's business associates witnessed his treatment of both the elderly volunteer and the cardiologist, who had attempted to provide context about Frank's actual contributions and professional background. Dr. Rodriguez decided to educate Marcus about Frank's background, hoping that factual information about his achievements and expertise might change his attitude toward someone who deserved respect, regardless of his current volunteer status. "Mr. Wellington, perhaps you should know that Frank Thompson is a decorated Vietnam War veteran who received 2 Bronze Stars for heroism," Dr. Rodriguez began, while Frank continued his technical work. "He's also a retired NASA engineer who worked on the Apollo program and contributed to spacecraft design that enabled moon landings." The information was delivered matter-of-factly, but it created immediate tension as Marcus realized that his assumptions about Frank might have been dramatically incorrect and that his dismissive treatment had been witnessed by business associates who were evaluating his judgment and character. Additionally, Dr. Rodriguez continued, "Frank has been volunteering here for 15 years, using his engineering expertise to maintain critical life support systems and medical equipment. His technical knowledge has literally saved patient lives through his ability to diagnose and repair complex problems that stump our certified maintenance staff." The revelation about Frank's background created an uncomfortable silence as Marcus realized that he had been insulting and dismissing someone whose achievements and contributions far exceeded his own in terms of service, heroism, and technical expertise that had benefited humanity rather than just personal wealth accumulation. His international business associates were also processing the information about Frank's background, recognizing that Marcus's treatment of a war hero and NASA engineer reflected poorly on his character and judgment in ways that could affect their confidence in his business leadership and decision-making capabilities. Well, he should have identified himself properly," Marcus stammered, attempting to justify his behavior while recognizing that his assumptions and treatment of Frank had been completely inappropriate regardless of any professional protocol considerations. Dr. Rodriguez recognized that Marcus was trying to blame Frank for not announcing his achievements rather than accepting responsibility for making assumptions based on age and appearance, demonstrating the kind of character flaw that she found personally offensive and professionally concerning. "Frank doesn't announce his background because he's humble and focused on helping people rather than seeking recognition," Dr. Rodriguez replied firmly. "But that doesn't excuse dismissive treatment of anyone, regardless of their background or current position." The conversation was being captured by security recordings while Frank continued his work. demonstrating the kind of professional competence and personal dignity that had characterized his approach to service throughout his life. Unknown to anyone in the VIP suite, the recorded footage was about to create consequences for Marcus that would extend far beyond embarrassment to include serious damage to his business reputation and public image that had been carefully cultivated through millions of dollars in marketing and public relations investment. Lisa Park, a hospital security technician who monitored the surveillance system, had been watching the interaction between Marcus and Frank with growing outrage at the billionaire's treatment of someone she knew to be one of the most respected and valuable contributors to the hospital's mission. Lisa had personal experience with Frank's expertise and character, as he had helped her family during a medical emergency when her younger brother required life support equipment that malfunctioned during a critical period. Frank's immediate response and technical knowledge had prevented a potentially fatal equipment failure that could have cost her brother's life. "This is absolutely disgusting," Lisa said to her colleague while reviewing the recorded footage of Marcus's dismissive and insulting treatment of Frank. "Everyone in this hospital knows Frank's background and contributions, but this arrogant billionaire treats him like trash because of his age and appearance." The security recordings captured every detail of Marcus's behavior, from his initial dismissive attitude to his explicit insults to his commentary about replacing elderly workers with artificial intelligence systems that wouldn't require human consideration or respect. Lisa made the decision to share the footage with social media platforms, recognizing that Marcus's public persona as a philanthropist and visionary leader needed to be contrasted with his actual treatment of people he considered beneath his attention or unworthy of basic courtesy. "People need to see what this guy is really like when he thinks nobody important is watching," Lisa explained, while uploading the high-definition footage to her social media accounts. "Frank Thompson is a hero who deserves respect, not insults from some arrogant tech billionaire who thinks money makes him better than everyone else." The footage was uploaded with context about Frank's military service, NASA career, and volunteer contributions to the hospital, creating a stark contrast between the elderly hero's humble service and the billionaire's arrogant assumptions about human worth and dignity. Within hours of Lisa's initial upload, the video began spreading across social media platforms as people shared their outrage about Marcus's treatment of a war veteran and retired engineer who had dedicated his life to serving others rather than accumulating personal wealth. The hashtag #OneRespectFrankThompson began trending nationally as veterans organizations, NASA alumni groups, and hospital workers shared the footage while providing additional context about Frank's achievements and contributions that Marcus had been too arrogant to learn or acknowledge. "Disgusting. Tech billionaire insults war hero and NASA engineer working as hospital volunteer" became headline news across major media platforms, with the security footage providing undeniable evidence of Marcus's character and his treatment of people he considered inferior. The video evidence showed Marcus's systematic dismissal of Frank's expertise, his explicit insults about aging workers, his commentary about replacing humans with artificial intelligence, and his complete ignorance about Frank's extraordinary background and contributions to American military defense, space exploration, and hospital patient safety. Technology industry media coverage focused on the implications for Marcus's business reputation and the confidence that investors might have in his judgment and leadership capabilities after witnessing his treatment of a decorated veteran and accomplished engineer. Tech mogul's true character exposed, billionaire insults war hero became trending news as the contrast between Marcus's public philanthropy and private behavior created questions about his authenticity and the values that guided his business decisions and personal interactions. The video also captured Marcus's commentary about replacing elderly workers with artificial intelligence systems, creating additional controversy about his vision for technology's role in eliminating human employment and his apparent lack of consideration for the social consequences of automation on working people and communities. Veterans organizations issued statements condemning Marcus's treatment of Frank, while highlighting the contrast between Frank's lifetime of service and Marcus's accumulation of wealth through technology ventures that hadn't contributed to military defense, space exploration, or direct service to people in need. The American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Vietnam Veterans of America all issued statements praising Frank's military service and NASA contributions, while criticizing Marcus's ignorant and disrespectful treatment of someone who had risked his life for American security and contributed to scientific achievements that advanced human knowledge. NASA alumni organizations shared information about Frank's specific contributions to space exploration, including his work on life support systems that had enabled astronaut survival during dangerous missions, and his engineering innovations that had been incorporated into spacecraft that explored the solar system. Hospital workers throughout the country identified with Frank's experience, sharing their own stories about being dismissed or disrespected by wealthy patients who assumed that service workers lacked intelligence, expertise, or dignity deserving of basic courtesy and professional respect. The broader healthcare community used Marcus's behavior as an example of how wealthy patients sometimes treated hospital staff, advocating for stronger policies that protected workers from harassment and discrimination, regardless of patient wealth or social status. Professional engineering organizations highlighted Frank's career achievements and volunteer contributions, while condemning Marcus's dismissive attitude toward elderly workers who possessed expertise and experience that younger employees and artificial intelligence systems couldn't replace. The consequences unfold. Within 48 hours of the video's initial upload, Marcus's business empire began experiencing serious financial and reputational consequences as investors, customers, and business partners responded to his treatment of Frank Thompson and his explicit commentary about replacing human workers with artificial intelligence systems. Stock prices for Marcus's publicly traded companies dropped by 23% as institutional investors expressed concern about his leadership judgment and the potential impact of negative publicity on consumer relationships and employee morale throughout his technology enterprises. Major corporate customers canceled contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, citing concerns about associating their brands with Marcus's treatment of veterans and elderly workers that contradicted their own corporate values and social responsibility commitments. The Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund that had been participating in Marcus's video conference announced the withdrawal of their $12 billion investment commitment, explaining that his treatment of Frank Thompson raised questions about his character and judgment that made him unsuitable for managing their institutional assets. Other international investors followed suit, recognizing that Marcus's behavior reflected leadership qualities and personal values that created reputational risks for their investment portfolios and institutional relationships with stakeholders who expected ethical leadership and social responsibility. The artificial intelligence industry distanced itself from Marcus's commentary about replacing elderly workers, with major technology companies issuing statements that emphasized their commitment to supporting human workers and communities rather than eliminating employment through automation without consideration for social consequences. Marcus's employees began resigning from key positions, including senior engineers, product managers, and executives who were embarrassed by their association with his public behavior and concerned about their professional reputations if they remained with his companies. The mass resignations created operational problems for Marcus's technology ventures, as departing employees possessed critical knowledge about product development, customer relationships, and technical innovations that couldn't be easily replaced despite his artificial intelligence capabilities. Veterans organizations organized boycotts of Marcus's companies and products, encouraging their millions of members to avoid supporting businesses that were led by someone who had demonstrated such disrespect for military service and elderly workers who had contributed to American defense and technological advancement. Hospital systems throughout the country implemented policies that prohibited vendors and contractors associated with Marcus's companies from providing services or products to medical facilities, recognizing that his treatment of Frank represented attitudes toward healthcare workers that were inconsistent with patient care values. The public relations crisis forced Marcus to issue a series of increasingly desperate apologies and explanations that failed to address the fundamental character issues revealed by his treatment of Frank and his commentary about replacing human workers with artificial intelligence systems. His initial statement attempted to minimize the incident as a misunderstanding, rather than acknowledging the systematic disrespect and arrogance that had been captured in high-definition video and witnessed by international business associates. "I deeply regret the misunderstanding that occurred during my recent hospital stay," Marcus's first statement read. "My comments were taken out of context, and I have tremendous respect for all hospital workers who provide important services to patients and medical facilities." But the video evidence contradicted his claims about misunderstanding and context, showing clear instances of deliberate insults, dismissive treatment, and explicit commentary about elderly workers that couldn't be explained away through public relations spin or strategic reframing. Public reaction to his initial apology was overwhelmingly negative, with social media users, veterans organizations, and technology industry critics pointing out that the recorded footage showed systematic disrespect rather than isolated comments that could be misinterpreted. Marcus's second apology attempt included offers of financial donations to veterans organizations and hospital charities, but critics recognized these gestures as calculated damage control rather than genuine recognition of the harm his behavior had caused to Frank personally and to broader communities of veterans and service workers. "No amount of money can undo the disrespect shown to a war hero and volunteer who has dedicated his life to serving others," responded American Legion spokesperson Patricia Martinez. "Mr. Wellington's behavior revealed his true character, and charitable donations don't change what people saw in that video." The crisis deepened as additional evidence emerged about Marcus's treatment of employees and service workers throughout his business career, with former workers sharing stories about similar dismissive and disrespectful behavior that created hostile working environments and demonstrated a pattern of arrogance toward anyone he considered socially or economically inferior. Business media investigations revealed that Marcus's companies had faced multiple complaints and lawsuits related to age discrimination, hostile workplace environments, and retaliation against employees who reported inappropriate behavior by management and executives. The investigations also uncovered internal communications that showed Marcus had previously made disparaging comments about elderly employees and had advocated for replacing experienced workers with younger staff and automated systems to reduce labor costs and eliminate what he considered inefficiencies in human resources. The transformation. 6 months after the video exposure of his treatment of Frank Thompson, Marcus Wellington faced the complete collapse of his carefully constructed public image and significant damage to his business empire that forced him to confront fundamental questions about his values, behavior, and responsibilities as a leader and human being. The financial losses from investor withdrawals, customer cancellations, and employee resignations totaled over $15 billion, representing one of the largest wealth destructions in technology industry history, resulting from personal behavior rather than business failures or market conditions. Marcus's technology companies were forced to undergo complete leadership restructuring, corporate culture transformation, and strategic repositioning that prioritized employee welfare, social responsibility, and ethical business practices over pure profit maximization and technological dominance. The personal transformation that Marcus underwent was equally dramatic, as he was forced to confront the arrogance and entitlement that had characterized his treatment of people he considered beneath his attention or unworthy of basic courtesy and respect. His journey toward understanding began with a personal meeting with Frank Thompson, arranged through hospital administration and veterans organizations that insisted on accountability and genuine recognition rather than just financial compensation or public relations gestures. The meeting took place in the hospital conference room, where Frank regularly conducted volunteer training sessions for younger maintenance staff and engineering students who sought to learn from his expertise and experience. "Mr. Thompson, I owe you an apology that goes beyond anything I said in my public statements," Marcus began, his voice carrying genuine humility for the first time in years. "My treatment of you was inexcusable, and it reflected arrogance and ignorance that I'm ashamed to acknowledge." Frank received Marcus's apology with the same grace and dignity that had characterized his response to the original insults, recognizing that genuine transformation required courage and humility that was difficult for someone who had never faced real consequences for inappropriate behavior. "Mr. Wellington, I appreciate your apology, but what matters more is whether you understand why your behavior was harmful, not just to me personally, but to all the people who work hard and serve others without recognition or appreciation," Frank replied, with the wisdom that came from decades of service and observation of human nature. The conversation continued for over 2 hours, with Frank sharing stories about his military service, NASA career, and volunteer work that helped Marcus understand the depth of his ignorance and the magnitude of his assumptions about human worth and dignity. Frank also introduced Marcus to other hospital volunteers, veterans, and service workers, whose backgrounds and contributions challenged every assumption that Marcus had made about the relationship between current position and life achievements or human value. The education process extended beyond personal meetings to include volunteer work at veterans organizations, homeless shelters, and community service programs that exposed Marcus to people whose life experiences and contributions contradicted his previous worldview about success, worth, and human dignity. Through months of volunteer service and personal reflection, Marcus began to understand how his wealth and privilege had insulated him from the realities of most people's lives and created assumptions about human worth that were both morally wrong and factually incorrect. His transformation included fundamental changes to his business practices, corporate culture, and personal behavior that prioritized employee welfare, community service, and social responsibility over pure financial returns and competitive dominance. Marcus's companies implemented comprehensive programs for supporting elderly workers, veterans, and employees from diverse backgrounds, recognizing that experience, wisdom, and varied perspectives contributed to business success in ways that artificial intelligence and automation couldn't replicate. The Frank Thompson Veterans and Service Workers Recognition Program was established with Marcus's personal funding and ongoing support, providing scholarships, career development opportunities, and public recognition for veterans and service workers whose contributions might otherwise go unnoticed or unappreciated. Marcus also became a public advocate for respectful treatment of service workers, speaking at business conferences and leadership programs about the importance of recognizing human dignity regardless of current position or apparent social status. My encounter with Frank Thompson taught me that I had confused wealth accumulation with human worth. Marcus frequently told business audiences, I was ignorant about the achievements and contributions of people I dismissed because of my own arrogance and entitlement. Every person deserves respect and recognition for their inherent dignity and their contributions to our communities. The story of Marcus Wellington and Frank Thompson became a powerful example of how individual encounters could challenge assumptions, create personal transformation, and inspire broader changes in how successful people treated others and understood their responsibilities to the communities that supported their success. Frank continued his volunteer work at the hospital while also becoming a national spokesperson for veterans' issues, and the importance of recognizing service workers whose contributions to society often went unacknowledged despite their essential role in maintaining the infrastructure and services that supported modern life. His quiet dignity and continued service inspired millions of people who shared their own stories about elderly workers, veterans, and service employees whose backgrounds and contributions were often invisible to people who made assumptions based on current appearance or position. The lasting impact extended beyond individual transformation to include policy changes in healthcare, technology, and service industries that strengthened protections for elderly workers, veterans, and service employees, while creating accountability for wealthy customers and employers who might abuse their economic power to mistreat vulnerable workers. Most importantly, the story reinforced the fundamental truth that human worth and dignity existed independently of wealth, social position, or current circumstances, and that respectful treatment of all people was both a moral obligation and a practical necessity for creating communities where everyone could contribute their talents and experience for the benefit of society. Frank Thompson had demonstrated that a lifetime of service, achievement, and contribution could be invisible to people who made superficial judgments, but that dignity and worth remained constant, regardless of recognition or appreciation from others. Marcus Wellington had learned that true success required recognizing and supporting the contributions of all people, and that wealth created responsibilities for treating others with respect and using resources to strengthen communities rather than just accumulate personal power and advantage. Their story continued to inspire individuals and organizations committed to creating environments where human dignity was respected, service was valued, and assumptions about worth were challenged by recognition of the complex backgrounds and contributions that every person brought to their communities and relationships. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.